And that's this year, and you guys will appreciate this because of everything going on in California with not going on in California, everything going on with Baffert, who's in California, is, with his horses being pointed for the Preakness, it makes it so difficult for us to be able to go, all right, well, we'll bring Hades into the Preakness. Not that the Derby is going to be easier or easy, I should say, but it'd be easier than the Preakness. That's what we're looking at.
Well, I don't know what happened to Maymoon. Does anybody have any news on Maymoon?
So Maymoon, they said it was going to be too far for him, the 9 furlongs in the Santa Ana Derby. So they're going to kind of recalibrate and bring him back to keep him at shorter distances.
Like the King's Bishop or something like that.
Even the Pate Mile, did they do that? Or?
Pate Mile, maybe too. Well, what about and there's no news on the other Nisos.
Nisos is for sure out. He's going to miss the Preakness. He's still at the track, and I saw Maymoon jogging on the training track the other day. They're still at the track. They're just not in that heavy every 7-day regimen that Baffert puts them through.
So the big bad Baffert is really Muth right now. He's the one that kind of didn't get into the Derby.
Unless you like Imagination off the defeat, or I guess he's still got Coach Prime in the back of the barn somewhere.
Line me up.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a tremendous lineup. You think? Yeah, I know. Newsflash. The sun came up and Baffert's got a lot of good horses, right? Yeah, exactly. Way to go, John. That's the way to add value to this. Breaking news. How do you guys handle? So I'm newer to this industry as far as the podcasting. I think you guys were like the patriarch and matriarch, respectively, of racing podcasting. How do you handle when you get these knuckleheads that are just outspoken on Twitter and shit like that?
Billy invites them on.
That's what Patty and I were saying. Which kind of knuckleheads are you talking about, though? Because there's different kinds of knuckleheads. Normally, the knuckleheads we don't even pay attention to, or Michelle writes them back, and Michelle can shut anybody up. I mean, she's way too nice.
Michelle, you might be on payroll.
I think you have to be really confident in what you do and the messages that you're sending out there and the positivity you have for the industry. And if that's the case, then it's just noise, and you let the people have their noise, and they can say what they want about you. And you just let it go, and you keep working hard and doing what you're doing. I mean, you have a really good stable of horses. You obviously have a nice show. You're buying, big time mares out of these Fasig sale that I just saw for $650. Look at you. I mean,
John, I want to know, is someone being mean to you, or are they saying bad things somewhere else?
There's people that are being mean to me, Michelle.
Listen, haters gonna hate,
John. Just tag me in those, all right?
Okay, all right. Definitely. I'm telling you, you're going to be on payroll very, very soon, Michelle.
Yeah, no one comes after me because of Michelle. I think that's exactly why.
No one comes after Billy because of Gary.
Yeah, maybe
I always wondered why partnerships end up lasting long. It's fear. It's strictly fear. It's fear and blackmail. It's got to be. It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
What is, since you guys have been doing this for a long time on the podcast, what's like the stupidest question you've ever asked?
Oh, well, if you ask Mike Rapoli, the stupidest question I've ever asked is when you started really getting into racing, what kind of brought that about? And he goes, well, it wasn't the fact I sold my company for $4.8 billion, was it, dumb fuck? That's basically what he said. And sorry about the profanity.
That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me.
And I was like, well, people start, you could have started with some cheap horses. It didn't have to be, cumulatively because you sold your company for $4.8 billion. So
that wasn't a dumb question. That was a dumbass answer. That was, no matter what you asked him, the answer was going to be I play pickleball, and this one instructor that gives lessons, every single time he's going to tell us how to do something, he goes, so when I won the gold medal back in '92 in the St. Petersburg Open, I served, and that's the way he starts every single thing. Mike's thing is, well, when I sold my first business for $4 billion, that was not a dumb question at all. That was just directed at a annoying.
I felt so much better. My face was like, oh.
Yeah, no, don't, please. I'll have your back on that one. Other than
that, we ask a lot of dumb questions.
Well, yeah, we don't. So. Yeah, my whole thing is that I don't even research people. So sometimes I'll ask something and Michelle will text me his wife died last week.
Right, exactly. You might want
to, yeah, like, hey, I don't know, something stupid.
Well, that's why I was so impressed that, like, you said, hey, I went on this new thing called the internet and looked up a couple of things about Jon.
Yeah,
and I was like so honored.
Yeah, I do that 5 minutes before we come on, just so I know.
Sometimes I'll send Billy like a link to an article. I'm like, here, read this and get a question out of it.
Exactly.
Nice.
But our show is
really... To be fair, Billy doesn't even know who the guest is going to be.
That's 100% true. I think, to be fair, and I like the spontaneity, and I think it brings something to when you talk to people and you really don't know a lot about them. And our show is very, owner centric. I mean, Michelle gets mad when we don't get owners on. She gets pissed at me. Like, if we have a special episode with a vet or a trainer, Carrie Brogdon, who's an owner, is coming on our show actually this week to talk about OBS and to talk about sales. And she's been on before. She's great. Right. But we do ask, if we're not talking about something specific like OBS April, we're usually talking about the same kind of thing. We're learning about that ownership journey. And what has the excitement and the path and what took you here. So it's a pretty standard type show. It's not like we're all over the place and we have to think of a zillion things to ask.
We're not breaking news, right? That's not our, although Billy tries to get like fresh 2-year-olds, or he certainly tries to get like next spots for horses.
What do you mean?
Like, you're like, tell me if you have any good horses coming up.
Oh, yeah. I like to.
Yeah, like, your babies, or like, he'll be like, what's the next spot for, this horse or that horse? So he certainly has asked those questions.
I like before. A little gambling edge at that.
But we're not trying to break any news, right? We're just trying to spread people's stories like that. Right. That way it's not Bob Baffert's May Moon, right? It's, Amer Zidane's May Moon, and we all know about Amer because he was on our show. Like, I mean, that's what we were trying for, right?
That's actually how we started the show. That was my pitch to Michelle a long time ago. As I used to get upset when it would say, Phil D'Amato's Stronghold, and I'd be like, Phil doesn't own that horse. It's Rick and it's the Wallers, and it's that would frustrate me that owners never did get a chance to tell their stories about their horses. That bothered me.
Yep. So much so that, like, I went on a little Twitter rant yesterday with a knucklehead. About,
you did? I'm going to find it.
Why aren't there any owners there's not even an owner's wing in the Hall of Fame. Really? I didn't know that. There's a trainer's wing. Yeah. There's a jockey's wing. There's a horse wing, but there were not any there's no owners on the ballot this year. And I was like, well, wait a second. Why aren't there any owners on the ballot? And somebody said, because there's something called pillars of racing. And the pillars of racing, if you look it up, over the 200-year history of the horse industry that they cover, there's 41 people in the pillars of the industry. And unless you're named Hancock, Clay, Phipps, or something like that, you ain't in one of the pillars. And there hasn't been a pillar. Like, Cod Campbell was the most recent person in our industry who's represented as a pillar of the industry. So it kills me that the owners, I mean, again, I'm an owner, but it kills me that owners aren't in there. And somebody said to me, well, part of the reason why owners aren't in there is because they don't add anything to the performance of a horse.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, I'm sure some owners would. Some owners might. Some owners just like sit there and maybe just twiddle their thumbs and say, "Here's my money and do what you want." But I'm sure just as many owners have something to do with, finding out that horse is going to be good and sending him to the person that could develop him the most. And I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, really, I think you're.
Go ahead.
The whole value of what you're adding as a managing partner is all your experience and all the decisions. Like, I know you're on the phone with the trainers, you're on the phone with the jockey agents, you're on the phone with the racing offices trying to figure out who's going to be, where you're proactively giving.
I think most trainers wouldn't like it, John. I think most trainers, and Michelle, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think trainers would like the owners to buy them the horses and then just shut up
and get out of the way.
Get out of the way. Let me do my thing. And and honestly, I think that would make them very happy. They wouldn't have to talk to owners and everything like that. I think it's a pain in their ass. But at the same time, John, I think you're right. I mean, like a couple of names just popped into my mind, like Eugene Klein. Like, is he a pillar? Like, shouldn't he be in the Hall of Fame? Like, I'm just like all these great California, Elmendorf Farm. Like, shouldn't they be in the Hall of Fame?
W.T. Young, from Overbrook. I mean, there's a bunch of people who aren't 5-generation Kentuckians that need to be considered. I'm not saying me, like I'm not.
I mean, come on, the Horonuses have to eventually be a pillar of racing, right?
I think so.
Absolutely.
Well, why call them a pillar? Just call them what they are. They're like a fucking influencer in the industry. Yeah. They're an owner or a breeder. Sorry, your kids are there on cursing, but.
My job is to get my kid's first word to be the F word just to piss off my mother-in-law.
There you go. Yeah, makes sense. It's a typical.
But it blew my mind that there wasn't even an owner or a breeder, for that matter, on this year's ballot.
That's strange. I would have never guessed that. I would have thought there was owners and breeders.
You would hope so, right? Because why else would we do this? Like you do this.
I mean, you talk about legacy, like in any sport. Legacy is something that you think about, but you don't necessarily plan for. Obviously, you want to leave a lasting legacy. You want at the end of the day, when you're done and I'm retired and all of us are, 80, 90, you guys will probably both outlive me, but you want people to say, hey, that Billy Koch, really did good stuff for horse racing. I mean, it should be that simple, right? He did this. He really helped. He was president of Karma, blah, 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 blah. But that's hard to think. You're not thinking about that as you go. Sometimes I think about relevance, and I always want to be relevant in the current situation. I want people to know, that name, Little Red Feather, means something. We take great pride in what we do and the horses we buy and the people we work with. And of course, our partners. We think they're the best in the business. They are so supportive, and we have bad shit happen all the time, just like everybody else. And it sucks and we hate it. And I feel so badly when it does happen. But this game is, as Michelle and I say on every podcast, John, this game is so hard. So, enjoy those high moments because they're few and far between. And so take advantage of those situations and enjoy it. And then, when you have things that go wrong, you're going to be sad. You're going to be bummed. You're going to you're going to want to I do the thing. I try to keep as a managing partner and as someone who's responsible for a lot of people, a lot of different owners and a lot of partners. I try to really keep a happy face and make sure, listen, it's not the end of the world. And then I get in my car and slam my head on the steering wheel and scream 5 times. That's my but that's me.
I get it. You have to have that outlet one way or the other.
Right. You got to do something.
I just yell at my kids. It makes me feel so much better.
Sometimes I've called Michelle in the past and said, did you see that race? Am I wrong to think that something that was not good?
Yeah. Well, it's good that you have a sounding board in each other. And it's good that you guys use the term brutally honest in the last show. And Michelle, as a special present for you, a gift for being on the show, we have reserved the name Brutally Honest. And I'm going to let you, unless Billy wants to use it for one of his horses, I'm going to use a horse that is going to be named Brutally Honest.
What a great name.
Yeah, we actually, believe it or not, we had a filly named Brutally Honest years and years and years ago. She was a Stormbird, and she was a fucking lunatic. I mean, a typical Stormbird, just And the reason why we named her Brutally Honest is because, I would call my trainer and say, hey, how's the Stormbird yearling doing? Well, to be brutally honest with you, she's a fucking nightmare. Or to be brutally honest, so we ended up naming her Brutally Honest. And you know what? Nobody's used the name since. So I reserved it after our last conversation.
Amazing.
And that's Michelle, awesome. You have the honor of being able to name a horse Brutally Honest. And know that it's because of you. No matter what anyone else says, it's because of you.
Very cool.
John, is this the least you've ever talked in a podcast, by the way? I feel like Billy and I just talk the whole time. And sometimes you're like,
no, this is awesome. This is the best because, and again, you guys have had guests on, where you've been sure. Okay, this isn't a deposition. This is an interview. When I ask you what time it is, or do you know what time it is? You don't say yes. You give me, tell me what's, and it's like pulling teeth, and I won't, we know what we're talking about, but and it's oh, for the love of God, just please, put 5 words together. So no, this is fantastic for me to be, and I know Patty's very excited about the fact that this is the least amount of conversation I've added to an interview before, which is great as far as she's concerned.